Hello and welcome back to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's online network workshop. My name is Seb. I'm going to be the host of your session. I'm part of the team here at the Foundation. And before we dive into the content of today's session, I just wanted for you to picture the scene. It's 6 p.m, you're returning home after a long day at work, and oh no, you realise you've left this sink tap on over the course of the whole day while you've been at work. The sink's been filling up, the water has spilled onto the floor, everything is wet. What do you do first? Well, after quickly checking that your prized collection of Taylor Swift albums are still intact and not damaged, of course you turn that tap off. And of course this story, it's a bit of a cliche, turn the tap off, stop it at its source. But it's a cliche for a reason. It's a cliche because clearly the best way of dealing with a problem is to go upstream and tackle the root cause of that problem. That's what we're going to be talking about in this session, because the same thing is true in the case of plastics. And I should say that today's session is not about plastics pollution or plastics problems, it's about the solutions. And who better to join me over the course of this session than 3 members of the Foundation's new plastics economy team who have worked on something called the Upstream Innovation Guide. And a little bit later, I'm going to be talking to Leela, Annetta and Sarah about the guide, why it was made, what's within it. And even a bit later on after that, we'll be diving deep into some of the specific tools and resources that you find in the guide. And throughout all of that, we're very happy to receive your questions, so post those in the chat and we'll feed them through to our guests. But to kick things off, I'm joined in the studio by Leela, who's going to tell us a little bit more about upstream innovation, how it applies to plastics, and what's in this fantastic guide.
Preventing waste by design starts with shifting our mindset. For packaging, this means shifting from thinking about how to deal with the pile of waste to thinking about how to prevent the pile of waste from ever existing in the first place. Essentially, shift from downstream to upstream. Look for ways to deliver value and products to users without creating waste. Dare to rethink the packaging, the product, and the business model. What I'm describing is the upstream innovation mindset, and it's what the Upstream Innovation Guide is all about. In a moment, I'll be taking you through how the guide can support you on your upstream innovation journey. But first, let's have a quick look at the guide in action and see what applying the mindset looks like for elimination through a short movie.
We should deal with a problem before it becomes a problem. And one way to do so is by eliminating what we don't need. See this plastic tear-off? Who needs that? Nestle didn't. Bam! 240 tonnes of plastic saved. And what about these multi-packs? So much plastic! Eliminate it. How many tonnes did that save last year, Tesco? Good stuff. Oof. Look, you can't always take away the packaging, but you can change the product. That saved many bathtubs of water, and of course the packaging. Thanks, Lush. Just be smart about it. Cucumbers need plastic to stay fresh, right? Wrong. You know what's really cool? Spray them with an edible spray instead. That could save this much plastic in the US. And who needs water bottles when you can have water blobs? Look, so blobby. And how about 6-packs that are simply held together with magic? Okay, and some glue. So if you're looking for packaging solutions, read this guide.
What the video made clear is it's not just me saying it. Once you adopt the upstream innovation mindset, possibilities start to appear. And the Upstream Innovation Guide is your one-stop shop for upstream innovation inspiration, with over 100 case studies profiled, including the one that's appearing on your screen now. And yes, it's the same cucumber that you just saw in the movie, and yes, it's the same cucumber that I keep talking about, but I'm not ready to stop talking about it just yet. Today's purpose is to show that for all of the case studies, you can either stay at the level of looking for excitement, cool images, and that spark of inspiration, or you can delve into the details on business benefits, environmental benefits, and innovation status. And for some of the case studies, get deep dive insights from ongoing pilots. All of the content is organized under easy to navigate tags and written in really clear, easy to understand language, so it can be accessible to anyone in your organization. Continuing on the theme of structure and moving to the next slide, all of the information in the guide is organized around the 3 circular economy strategies for packaging of elimination, reuse, and material circulation. For each of these, we provide a logical framework that can help you to structure thinking. The 2 approaches for elimination, the 4 business models for reuse, and the 3 strategies for material circulation. We've seen what the mindset looks like for elimination. Now let's have a quick look at what the mindset looks like for reuse.
If you want to get rid of packaging waste, don't let packaging become waste. Reuse it. You can reuse this bottle to make your own cleaning product, like that. And how many plastic bottles did that save, Everdrop? Nice. And don't buy single-use bottles with bubbly water if you can add bubbles to your tap water. That saved 6 billion single-use bottles. Right, SodaStream? Another great way to reuse is to refill. Great for cat food or coffee, but don't mix. Hey, and why not reuse on the go? You order the spiced pumpkin latte, Cup Club takes care of the cleaning, potentially saving this many cups in the UK every year. And should all these single-use bottles be different, or can they share one reusable design? How many single-use bottles have you saved, Coke? Wow, and that's just in Latin America. So if you're looking for packaging solutions, read this guide.
So we now have the upstream innovation mindset in place. We've got the frameworks for elimination, reuse, and material circulation, and we've got 100 case examples. But you might still be asking, how do I actually get started? Getting innovation off the pages of the PDF and into the real world is also our main interest. So we provide our perspective in the guide. For each of the frameworks, we provide guidance on where to start and what good looks like. We take you through the key ingredients for successful upstream innovation, telling the stories of those who have done it. And we provide a tool to help you navigate all the different upstream innovation options and decide which one would be right for you. And everything I've just mentioned, that's actually just the PDF. So we finished the PDF, and then our digital team told us that no one reads PDFs anymore. So online, you'll find an upstream innovation universe. And seriously, before entering the universe, I suggest you tell your family they're not going to see you for 4 days. In the universe, we've got an interactive summary of the guide, a searchable innovation database, ready-to-run workshop tools, the guide in 5 languages, and of course, the handy videos. And with that, let's have a look at the last video and how the upstream innovation mindset can be applied to keep materials in circulation.
OK, what do we mean by material circulation? Well, if eliminating the packaging doesn't work, and reusing things doesn't work, then at least the materials should stay at work. The thing is, a lot of stuff isn't made to be remade. So, we have to go back to the start. Take recycling, for example. If we mix materials, it's hard to take them apart and even harder to recycle. So when we start to design a product or packaging, maybe we shouldn't do it from many materials, but from a single material and a single colour, or no colour, giving it the best chance of getting recycled. And it doesn't stop there. We need a system too, a system for collecting, sorting, and in this case, recycling. So, if you're looking for packaging solutions, read this guide.
So that was a quick tour of the upstream innovation universe that our team members have created, and we're now joined, hopefully going to be joined online by Sarah and Annetta, also from the team. Leela, I forgot to warn people about the magician hands that we have in these videos. There we go. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Sarah, I want to come to you first. Before we talk in a bit more depth about the guide, and we've had a good overview already, can you take us through a bit of the story of what was the thought process behind it? Where did the idea come to write it? What's the need?
I think actually this was one of the projects where we actually didn't have a guide in mind. From the beginning, it sort of grew into a guide. What we really had in mind from the beginning was what's really needed at this point in time. 2 years ago, we had our entire network signing up to concrete 2025 targets. Now we're 2 years into delivering on these targets. So now is really the time to bring everything that we've done so far, all the knowledge that we have, both on how we structure content, but especially also around the content that we have, and bring that into one comprehensive guide. And I think that also reflects a little bit all the different assets that we've decided to add to the PDF, as Leela was talking about, that actually we then wanted to take the case studies and bring it into a database so it's easy to search and easy to understand what sort of works best for you, or workshops, so you can host workshops and apply what we do. So, yeah.
I see there's already people in the chat giving us very good reviews on our content. It's quite one of the things that people might be surprised about when they first dig into this guide will be that it doesn't talk about the problem, it doesn't talk about stats to do with plastic packaging or plastic waste. That feels quite intentional. Can you tell us a little bit why you chose to do that?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. I think some of the we have learned along the way that actually stats on plastic pollution, they're quite effective and very stark. The only problem is that it can actually be hard to get past the point of talking about the problem, because once you hear more plastic than fish in the ocean, you kind of just stop and you cannot move past that, devastating fact. So for this guide, we kind of took the point of actually for our network, they know about plastic pollution. We know this problem well. So let's just skip that for now and talk about the solutions for this particular guide.
Yeah, and I guess that sort of makes sense. We all know that there's a problem out there. We know what we need to do, or we need to know what we need to do something. So let's talk about some of the things that this guide particularly digs into. There's three, from your great intro there, Leela, there's three areas that the guide breaks down into in terms of solutions: elimination, reuse, materials. Elimination, so we are talking about getting rid of plastic packaging. Why is that exciting, and what's kind of contained within that section?
Yes, so the first thing that we found exciting about elimination was that it's just a much bigger opportunity than you would think. And we also got surprised once we started looking for case studies and examples in elimination at the breadth of opportunity that was there. And so I think for a lot of people, when they first hear elimination, you're actually just thinking about bans on straws and plastic bags and sort of quite specific products. Once we got into elimination, we realized that really it's an opportunity for some really quick wins. And we saw some examples in the video there of removing, Tesco removing the multi-wrap from their multi-buy cans, removing the tear-offs. And then we also realized it's an opportunity for some quite fundamental innovation, and that was the cucumber that I keep talking about and the edible coating, or shifting to a solid product. So yeah, what we wanted to get across and what we were excited about was elimination, a much bigger opportunity than you would think, and actually this hidden innovation opportunity, not just about getting rid of packaging without delivering the function, but about being really innovative.
And it strikes me in both the examples we talked about there, this is about designing to eliminate the plastic packaging to begin with, which is why the word innovation is so useful. It's not about looking at the waste you're creating and trying to eliminate it. Is that right?
Yeah, and so I think you're hitting on exactly what elimination's about. It's actually looking at the function of your packaging, and that comes to the design perspective. What function is my packaging serving? If it's not serving a function, then you can immediately eliminate it, and that's where you get the easy wins. If it is serving a function, how can I design and deliver that function in a different way that doesn't produce the waste? And I think that's just sits at the heart of this rethink mindset, the packaging, the product, and the business model. What function are you trying to deliver? How do you deliver that function without creating waste?
I know that if one of our design team here that was here, they would want me to say that we talk about design being the way things work rather than the way things look. and that's echoed there. Continuing on this sort of slightly whistle-stop tour, we've also got Aneta online. And Aneta is known in the foundation as being kind of our reuse expert. Actually, maybe more than that, a reuse guru, sort of the Dalai Lama of reuse. So lots of people, reuse is almost a slightly trendy topic, I guess, at least among consumers and at least amongst certain functions. And that, so there's increasing hype. What is new about reuse on this guide? What might people find out in this guide about reuse that maybe they haven't heard on the street?
Yeah, thanks, Seb. Well, with the reuse book last year, we definitely, I would say, managed to put reuse on the agenda, and it's been incredible to see the past year of excitement and talking and piloting to an increasing extent from our network.
Cut you off. Can you just remind us, the reuse book that we published last year, that's another piece of content that people on this stream might want to check out.
Exactly. Well, now they should maybe just check out the Upstream Innovation book, right? Because that really includes both what we had in the reuse book and, to your question, a lot of new insights as well. Because what we've seen in the past year is that so many companies have started now to test, how do you do this? It's not just exciting. We also need to figure out, how do we make these reuse models work? And what we're doing in the new Upstream guide is that we try to summarize a little bit some of these learnings on barriers. What has went well, what has worked, what has definitely not worked. So I can only encourage people to take a look at that updated content on reuse in the Upstream guide as well, where we give some of these deep dive insights into what has worked and try to answer some of the tricky questions, such as how COVID has affected reuse and much more.
Can you give us any kind of tease on some have there been any insights in the work that have been particularly surprising or might surprise anyone who's watching here, or anything that kind of confirms maybe what you would kind of expect?
I think one of the things that we're very excited about is that actually COVID has not affected the reuse revolution in a negative way. It's only one of the reuse models that's been significantly challenged with this new attention to hygiene and safety. It's the refill on the go model. And even for these models where the consumer is meant to bring their own packaging and go to a refill spot, I think it's a great learning that many has actually managed to keep that model working in a safe way by applying IoT, making the dispenser smart, so avoiding direct contact between the product and the consumer. So that's really been great to see in the past year, that despite this massive challenge, these models are actually thriving. And some are even has thrived better during the pandemic than before, with record sales for solutions like Gramo and Loop and Vital in Germany. So that's been terrific.
And that is a kind of surprising insight. Maybe that's because of some of the headlines, and very encouraging, I guess, for some of the pilots that organisations are doing on that front. We might come back to reuse before the end. I wonder if there'll be some questions. I've seen some questions already percolating. The final section, Sarah, is there's a whole section in this guide on recycling, composting, substitution of materials. What do people find in there, and why did we put so much attention on that?
Yeah, I think it's important to include that into a comprehensive guide like this is, because that is definitely a part of the solution set, right? It is also, recycling is something that we've seen a lot of focus on. And at the same time, recycling, composting, and substitution to things like paper. Here, those topics are really one of or some of the areas where we wanted to bring more clarity. We get so many questions on these topics that here we have a lot of FAQ. We have a lot of insights into what good practices look like today. So we felt there was actually an important piece to bring into a comprehensive guide.
So what do we find in there? Are we finding definitions? Are we finding, tell me what to do with my piece of packaging that I don't know what to do with?
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds extremely useful. And then...
And just there, like picking up, you're asking me about design before in terms of elimination. I think what we're showing is that design is really important for reuse, and it's also really important for material circulation. So it's that design aspect that comes into keeping the materials in circulation. Of course, there'll be a downstream component, the collection, the sorting, the actual recycling, but the design is what allows it to fit into the system, and that's what we bring across.
So it's designed to eliminate unnecessary packaging, it's designed to reuse and keep the products and materials in use, and it's also designed to ensure that materials can circulate back into the economy in some way.
Yeah, actually, and just picking up on that, because just like elimination proved to have a bit more depth to it than we thought, actually this upstream innovation mindset also showed that you can even rethink the product to facilitate better recycling. For example, there was a case study on JOI, which is a nut paste, not a nut milk, which allows you to actually completely redesign the packaging because you've changed the product, and you can have a more recyclable packaging if you wish, if you do that. So that I thought was an interesting piece to bring in as well.
Because we kind of assume that we've kind of worked out the design for recyclable packaging or for compostable packaging, and what you're saying is this guide adds some nuance to that.
Yeah, definitely.
And this guide is not just filled with information, of course. Indeed, Annette, the last chapter is called Setting Up for Success, and is focused on what companies can do to actually apply the insights of the guide directly. How do we figure out how to apply some of these things directly, considering all the complexity we've already introduced in the topics we've covered?
Yeah, we were actually asking ourselves that very same question, like, how do we do this? So our approach was to talk to a couple of the businesses in our network that we know have succeeded. And then we tried to map out what are the common traits that we hear when we talk to Coke or Nestle or Tesco or a company like Google X, who are really successful in doing innovations. Are there any common traits or ingredients? And we saw actually that there were 5 key ingredients that appeared in most of these cases in different orders with a slightly different character. But really interesting to see that for something like Nestle, a key ingredient has been to build this entrepreneurial culture in the company. So having a set of structures that encourage employees to submit new ideas, employees to vote on ideas, and internal processes to actually follow up on these new ideas. And that's just one example. We also saw, for example, patient capital being a key ingredient to succeeding with these things. And that those 5 key ingredients are summarized in the last chapter, where we tell these stories from some of the companies who did it. And we would love to hear from you once we get more and more companies on this journey, if this is something that resonates, and what it looks like in your organization.
And that, for me, that really rams home this message that this isn't about what we do at the end, right? This is about how your company fundamentally exists and operates, as well as how you design your products and create the systems around them. It's everything, and it's a fundamental rethink of that, which might include, in your case of Nestle example, rethinking your innovation culture in order to enable you to do that kind of fundamental shift versus just incrementally maybe changing something about your business.
Exactly.
I've got one more question for myself, selfishly as the host. Obviously, I get to ask all my questions, but we have got some good questions coming in, which I will ask in a minute. So keep sending those in via that Q&A function. I'm not sure exactly who wants to take this. Maybe I'll start with you, Sarah, and we can go around. But what was the most difficult aspect of writing this guide? There's a lot of content in it. What was the most challenging thing for you, Sarah?
By far getting the structure right. I think the key element of this work was really to try to take everything we've done so far and put it into a structure where we don't have too many words. It's kind of easily accessible, easy to navigate, and it all makes sense, which, we tried to do that, and it really was a process that took so many iterations, and I think Lila can definitely talk to that as well. We were over this so many times, so by far getting the structure right.
And Lila, there's a lot. When I say there's a lot in it, there's a lot. There's a lot of examples as well. Examples are so powerful for people actually being able to take action and apply them. That must have been a challenge.
Yeah, getting all the case studies together and all the examples was definitely a challenge. It was also the most fun part of pulling the guide together. I think for all of us, we love innovation, so we just love finding them. And also picking up on what Sarah was saying around the structure, I think finding the case studies, the first ones was a struggle, and then that helps you set a bit of the structure, and that again helps you set the direction for what sort of innovations you want to look for. And so there's a bit of a back and forth process there to then settle on the really great examples and a really clear structure to present that in. And I guess I also want to highlight that what's interesting about looking for the examples is the fact that we're not just looking for packaging innovation. As Sarah was saying, we're looking for product innovation, we're looking for business model innovation, and that can be harder to find initially, right? Because there's sort of the packaging awards, or you can look at those, but it's starting to find some of these examples also where someone maybe didn't even know that they were doing innovation that was going to improve their packaging outcome. You know, they were actually innovating on the product, they were innovating on the business model. Finding those really great examples as saying you didn't even know you were doing it, and you've now ended up with better packaging outcomes. So that was the fun challenge, but certainly a challenge.
That also brings up another point, that it's when we talk about the innovation that you're showcasing and talking about, often the motivation sometimes the motivation is going to be plastics, want to deal with our packaging challenges. Very often, though, the motivation is going to be just the business opportunity that exists. We talked about reuse earlier. That's a huge business opportunity to £10 billion or $10 billion or pounds, Sarah and Annette, according to one of our at least 10 billion, according to our research. Dollars. So this isn't just being motivated by what you do with your packaging, it's being motivated by how do you create better products and services. And finally, you, Annette, toughest part of putting this guide, or most crucial aspect?
I mean, one of the things we really wanted to, as Sarah also mentioned at the beginning, is to make it comprehensive, but also short enough for people to pick it up and read it. And we really wanted to cover all these questions that we hear all the time, or that we get all the time when we do presentations, or just when we engage with you in our network. So landing those tricky questions, one thing, and then also answering them in a simple way, actually landing on our position on questions such as LCA, when do you need paper? The COVID question that I just covered before. So really trying to get these simple answers to all the tricky questions, so we can hopefully leave you, our network, with that guidance that you're looking for.
When do you need paper? Being a tricky question. I'm going to have to dig into that one. Right, this is the part that hopefully the audience have been waiting for. We've got some questions in online, so thank you so much for sending those in. There's a question about, maybe it's directed to you, Sarah, but if anyone else wants to pick it up, about standardization, the role of standardization in terms of achieving some of the things that we're talking about, elimination perhaps. And the question is literally, are you aware of the different reasons for not standardizing plastic packaging among FMCGs?
Yeah, I can definitely take a crack at it, but Annette, you have also been working a lot with this specific question, actually, but a lot of it comes down to branding, right? If you're standardizing, being that on the materials or the look or the shape or the colors or whatnot, it is also impacting how much you can differentiate yourself. What we do find interesting, though, is a couple of examples throughout the book is actually that this tendency is changing. We're seeing more and more companies actually warming up to the idea of collaborating around packaging standards, both for recycling. There's a case study for Coke switching from the iconic green Sprite bottle to a clear one, for example. So a clear indication of trying to move and make packaging in general more simple and more aligned. So yeah, it is the differentiation definitely is the largest challenge that we hear.
And I guess that is a topic for reuse as well, Annette, when you look at the prospect of those models.
Definitely. I mean, what we've seen is that those reuse models that have actually reached a significant scale, they have also applied some level of standardization, because it is a way to unlock some significant benefits environmentally and also economically, because you reduce the complexity of the system. And now I'm especially talking about the returnable reuse models. So we are seeing this trend, I would say, coming more and more into practice, that companies maybe view it as an innovation challenge then to find a way to differentiate. And I really liked one of the examples in the book from the elimination section. It's Lush. They obviously don't have labels because they have these naked products. So how do they communicate? They have created an app where you scan the product, and there you get all the information you need about what's in this shampoo bar or shower gel bar or whatever. And it's just one example of how we can be creative in terms of how we differentiate and communicate our story and our brand, while maybe going more and more towards standardization to unlock some of these benefits and make especially reuse models more scalable.
And it always strikes me that a lot of those differentiation factors that exist today have come out of tremendous innovation. A lot of the products we have now have come out of tremendous innovation, and sometimes it feels like what we're really asking is just to continue innovating. We're looking for more innovation, that same mindset that has got us to the place we are today. We're not looking to do a step change in that, we're just looking to innovate more. Question about the 3 different strategies, Leela. Are they in an order for any particular reason, or is it alphabetical?
I don't think it is alphabetical. So no, they are in an order for a reason, because to move towards a circular economy for plastics, we do need to reduce the amount of plastic that we have in the system in the first place. That's the elimination. We then need to keep using our packaging as many times as possible. That's reuse. And for the packaging that remains, hasn't been eliminated, and even if it is reusable, that then needs to be designed to be able to be recycled and kept in the system. So it is in that order, because that is the way you should be approaching your packaging portfolio, to understand what can be eliminated, what can be reused, and then where material circulation is applied. I guess also it picks up on the vision that's set out in the New Plastics Economy initiative. Again, looking at elimination, reuse, material circulation being the 3 first points of our vision. So that's why.
So we are pretty much out of time, and in a moment, Anetta's going to take us on a little bit of a deep dive of a little part of that Upstream Innovation Guide universe, as we've started to call it. I have one last question I just wanted to quickly throw over to you, I think, Sarah, which is, there's a question about monomaterials. Is that the way to go?
That's a very, complex question to answer, actually. I think going back to simplifying structures is definitely helpful for to improve economics overall. I think with the multi-material packaging that we've had so far, it is actually very difficult to recycle in practice and at scale. So it is one of the topics that we go into a little bit in the guide, and we do, for example, suggest to move from the multi-materials to the mono-materials to help recycling overall. That is a design change that can help. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sarah and Leela. We're about to move into the last section of this session, where we're going to take a really deep dive with Anetta for about 7 or 8 minutes, actually, because this guide, we've talked about a bit about the overview of the guide. We've talked about some of the things it contains. We've talked about the eliminate, reuse, material circulation strategies, all empowered by design. But this guide is also about how do we do it? What sort of things should you start doing? And Anetta's going to take us through a couple of the assets within the guide that allow us to do that. So I'm going to hand over to you, Anetta, now to take us on that journey.
Thanks, Seb. That's great. And I think we can just jump straight into it. The idea is that I will share my screen and guide you through some of these assets that we created, hopefully making you a bit more comfortable with opening them up on your own and using them, which is, of course, our ultimate goal with this. So I'm just going to share my screen. And if you haven't been there already, this is the code for this online upstream innovation universe that Leela was talking about. Here you find an interactive summary of the guide. So if you're not into a 200-page PDF, you can find a bit more digestible version here. And there's a resource button, which is not in the guide. It will take you to the bottom of the website, where you find these 6 different tools. Of course, the guide in its 5 different languages, a case study database, presentation slides to do a presentation about upstream innovation, a communication pack with different assets, the YouTube videos. I also saw someone was asking on the chat for them. They're also here, those that Leela showed at the beginning, and a workshop toolkit. And now in the next 7 minutes, we'll focus a little bit on uncovering the case study database and the workshop toolkit. So let's take a look at the database. You might find it a bit old school and clunky. These online things are still not what we're best at, but we're trying. And what we tried here is to gather all the studies that are in the book, because we want to make it easy and accessible for you to find cases that you're looking for and cases that you're excited about. So you can filter, for example, clicking here, add a filter, and choose a specific product type. Let's say you're interested in fresh fruit examples. And you might add additional filters if you, for example, only want to see cases from North America. Then you'll get the overview of those cases. And you can click on a specific case if you want details on the business benefits, the environmental benefits, the innovation status, and links to the website. These are just the case studies that we feature in the guide. And we really hope it will not be static. We hope it will be built out and can be that reference point for all the cool things that are going on upstream innovation. So up here, you'll find a submit button, and we really encourage you to use it. Submit new solutions, submit examples if you find anything that we should be aware of. Okay, that was the database. Hopefully it will be helpful. Let us know. Back to the website and the resource overview. The workshop toolkit. The reason why we created this toolkit is actually because we got so many requests in the past 1.5 years to come and do workshops with you, to host presentations on topics like reuse. And while we would love to be with all of you at once, it's simply not possible. So therefore, we created this comprehensive toolkit to really help you plan and run a workshop on your own. We have used a software called Miro. It's an online workshop tool. And before we jump into it, and I'll show you what it look like, we can look at the supporting material. Because one of the things we created is a facilitation guide. And this is where you find the answers to all the questions you might have now around how do I plan such a workshop? Who do I invite? How many do I invite? What should I remember? How do I access this new Miro software thing? How do I open it up? How do I execute the exercises? Everything, it's in this guide. So I can just encourage you to find that. And also in the supporting materials folder here, you will also find, for example, a sheet to help you on the workshop timings. You'll find presentation notes. So if you're doing a presentation to kickstart the workshop on upstream innovation, you can see some talking points that would be the ones that we would be using if we were doing the presentation. And there is the link to download the Miro board. And I won't do that now because it's a bit of a time-consuming process right now. We'll try to make it easier. The guidance is in the facilitation guide. I cheated and I already have it open here. So let's take a look at it. This is the Miro whiteboard, so to speak. You can see it's interactive in the sense that you can zoom in and zoom out. Might be lagging a little bit because it's quite a big file. There we go. One of the things that this whiteboard contains, or Miro board contains, is this introduction slideshow, as I said. So up here you can see there is slides on what upstream innovation is. There is slides on why it's exciting, why you should be uncovering it. There is, of course, an overview of the strategies. Let's see. And for each of the models, we have slides to explain what they are, what they look like, and case examples that you can use to help your team understand what this is about. And you might then think, dissolvable cleaning tips, that's not going to make my team or my colleagues excited about a refill at home in this case. So in the Miro board, there's also a case study library over here where you can pick the cases you think will be most exciting for your audience and draw them into that presentation deck. The Miro board also contains some activities to help you get started with talking about this in your organization. For example, what we call an everything on the table exercise, where you put an existing plastic packaging picture in and you try to take it apart virtually by highlighting all the different components and trying to pinpoint what the functionality is. Is it essential, or can rethinking the product, the packaging, or the business model unlock new opportunities? Another exercise is using strategy cards to prompt the discussion on elimination, reuse, and material circulation. So for each of these, we created a set of cards that can help you start thinking about the opportunities. This could, for example, be for reuse, something like how you can make refill more effortless with smart dispensers. And the idea is then that you drag these cards down next to a how might we question that you create that is relevant for your organization. Like if you want to explore how to introduce a reuse, refill on the go offering for beverages in Asia. And we tested this, of course, when we developed it. And here's just one example of what this can look like after the exercise with multiple Post-its grouped in different themes. And a lot of energy has really positive energy has gone into this. And it's been incredible to test it in the couple of past months with some of you. So other than being a tool to get a lot of ideas on the table, which is not a table, but on the virtual whiteboard, we help you go through that process of voting and prioritizing different ideas by understanding the impact or how radical incremental it is and how difficult or easy it is to achieve. And if everything goes well, you should, after this workshop, which is meant to last roughly half a day, 3 hours, you should be left with 3 ideas that are particularly exciting and clearly identified next steps to take this onward in your organization. That was really the short tour of the workshop toolkit. And as I said, I hope you will use this. Basically, go into the website, open up these tools, and get started and let us know how it goes. We're more than happy to get some feedback on whether this is useful or whether we can do something else. Our only interest is to help you and help all of us keep this ball rolling on upstream innovation.
Thank you very much, Annette, for that, and thank you to Lida and Sarah as well for your willingness to put yourselves under the microscope and answer my questions and the audience's questions during this session. Thank you all for joining in this session at the Foundation's Online Network Workshop and for your active participation. Do make sure you go and check out some of those resources that all of the team have highlighted, the videos, the workshop tools, the guide. I think what I'm taking away from this session is what are those top line ideas that we go and turn that tap off and innovate upstream, the notion of the strategies that we can deploy to do that, elimination, reuse, material circulation. It's just the depth that we have available in that resource, seeing Annette at the end there navigating to that case study section and being able to navigate it down by type of product and geography, and there still being a huge range of cases. There's a lot to explore in that guide, and I hope you will. Thank you so much again, once again to my guests. Thank you for joining at home, and we hope to see you again on the Network Workshop in one of our other sessions.